back to my channel. It's EJ here. Well, call me Em, right? I said that I would do this, but last night what happened? I couldn't get the Epstein list through the court documents. Now, I only looked at the Epstein documents. I didn't look at Ghislaine, the flight log being there. So I had to look around and found an article that we could read together. And I'll show you this first. I found this. Now, it doesn't mean everyone on this list, it's the truth, it matter, okay? I don't know, right? The documents of Jeffrey Epstein, disinformation and context. See, this is the disinformation. People said that these people were on the list. Let's have a look. Right. I can't see these people, but you have Adam Perry Lang, Akon, Al Gore, Alan Dershowitz, Albert Pinto, Alec Baldwin, Alison Mark, Aisha Rogers, Anderson Cooper, Andrea Mechovic, Andres Pastrana, Angelina Jolie, Anthony Kiedis, Anthony Weiner, Barack Obama, Ben Affleck, Bernie Sanders, Beyonce, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Bob Sargent, Bruce Willis, Casey Wasserman, Callum Hudson Odie, Celine Dion, Charles Barkley, Charlie Sheen, Charlize Theron, Chelsea Handler, Cher, Chris Tucker. Now these are the people that are saying it's disinformation, but I haven't seen this list on anything. So I have a feeling that a lot of people on this list are actually on this flight log. But I'm gonna need evidence for that, for this channel, okay? Because it's a channel that relies on it. Glenn Dubin, Greg Hobart, Gwen Stefani, Gwendolyn Beck, Hank Collier, pilot, Heather Mann, Heidi Klum, Henry Rossitsky, Hillary Clinton, James Franco, James Glenn. Is that James Glenn or James Gunn? James Gunn. Jean-Luc Bonnell, Jean-Michel McCarthy, Jeremy Jones, Jim Carrey, Jimmy Kimmel, Joe Biden, someone, I don't know. See, it's hard to look and tell. John Legend, John Podesta, John Travolta, Joe someone, I don't know. Julia Bryant, Justin Rowland, Justin Timberlake, Kathy Griffin, Katy Perry, Kelly Spam, Kevin Spacey, Nicole Junkerman, Oleg Kolovgov, Olive Sacks, Oprah, of course, Orlando Bloom, Paris Hilton, Putin Oswald, Walt, Paul Meleno, Epstein someone, Paula Hayler, Peter Maroney, Pharrell Williams, Prince Andrew, Prince Charles, Quentin Tarantino, Rachel Maddow, Rainn Wilson, Ralph, oh my words, it's a lot of people. I don't know. I'm just going to read on. Rihanna, Rita Wilson, Rob Reiner, Robert De Niro, Robert Downey Jr., Rodney E. Slater, Rodney Burkle, Ruby Gerpert, Shada Berger, whatever, Sarah Cullen, assistant, Sarah Silverman, Nissen. I don't know if this is an official list and that's what's on there. The judge has ordered the disclassification of several documents related to the case of Epstein, the American multimillionaire who committed suicide in prison in 2009 while waiting trial for creating a sex trafficking ring involving minors. Epstein faced similar charges to one he avoided in 2008. After reaching a plea deal with the public prosecutor, for which he served 13 months, a work release program was registered as a sex offender. Documents that have just been released are part of defamation lawsuit filed in 2015 by Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's accusers, against Ghislaine Maxwell, the ex-lover, ex-business partner of the multimillionaire, who was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2022 for helping him sexually abuse underage girls. The release of these documents has caused a surge in disinformation about their contents and the names that appear there. Who do we know? We'll explain it to you. The published documents do not contain a list of Epstein's clients. No, they don't. It's a flight log. It really is only that. It doesn't mean that these people, I mean, Paris Hilton went to parties a lot. It's like, wow, please, listen, don't jump on people, okay, because they were on a flight log. It's totally, it could be a paedophile. Paedophiles go through life and people don't know, I suppose I've got more to say in defence of this rather than human, because I'll be honest with you, after reading Hackett's statement yesterday, now I feel either there's two killers on the loose. It's made me more suspicious of Hackett and Michael Park. Maybe Shannon was killed by someone else. That's what I'm worried about. And they're not caught. That's what I'm concerned of. I have no clue, really. I'm not going to lie. I won't say one thing and then I'll speak my truth, love. I'm going to tell you. It's there in black and white for you. He talked about burlap sacks. I have no idea why. He also knew who the last people Shannon was talking to. That's why I jumped on. And someone asked me to read his affidavit, and I did. I got halfway through. I just don't want anything to come back on me. Like, I have no idea what the hell Hackett was like, why he was lying so much. It's only going to look bad if you lie that much and also know that much. You shouldn't know all that. Now, I don't know if he said this stuff on this is what's so confusing, on the affidavit in 2015. See, we might have known about the burlap then. I have no idea. Yeah. So I'm going to keep an open mind with that one right now and just keep reading. But yeah, I'll carry on with this. However, there is no list of sexual clients of the millionaire, which is what is gone viral. This can be seen in the files released by New York authorities. In the reports by news agencies such as the US-based Association Press and the fact-checking platforms such as Moldita, Neutral, Snopes, members of the International Fact-Checking Network, which verifies also belongs. I don't know what that means. Okay, yeah, I'm not the best reader. In addition, just because a person's name appears on these documents does not mean said person is accused of a crime, but rather that the person could be mentioned among testimonies, names of victims of or people of whom Epstein interacted at some point with. During the investigation, Moldita explains, being mentioned in the documents does not imply any sort of guilt. They range from emails or testimonies by victims and witnesses. Describes in detail. In fact, the newly released documents mainly mentions figures whose names were known already, including Epstein high-profile friends and victims who have. Do you know what I didn't mention on that list? Stephen Hawking, who went there. Naomi Campbell. So I don't know why they're not on that list. So it makes me ask more questions than answers. So, okay. Did Jeffrey Epstein's Victim Fund protect his allies? Yeah, it did. The notorious sex predator estate said it would compensate victims, but those who took money feel shortchanged while almost 200 million remains in Epstein's trust. It's to protect these people, isn't it? Let's face it. That's why it's there. That's why the fund is there. Okay? This is what's more damning to me. Okay? The fact that people are silenced. 3 months after Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in Manhattan, a trio of crisis professionals announced plans for the fund to help pay restitution to Epstein's victims. The distinguished experts, a press release announcing the fund said, would give the victims an opportunity for money and closure through a confidential, non-adversarial alternative to litigation. Okay, so that is basically paying the silence. Okay, once you paid, you can't testify. That's why Jeffrey's the only one, if you like. I mean, if I got 100 million to shut me mouth, I'd shut me mouth. Yeah. The press release boasted that the experts Kenneth Feinberg, Camille Barrows and Jordana Fieldman had extensive experience in fashioning similar claims and programs. Feinberg, I've heard this name in his court filing, I have no idea. It said, was the nation's leading expert. Feinberg, a former aide to Sen Ted Kennedy, and designed so many high-profile programs like the Epstein Fund over the last 20 years that he is virtually the only big-name figure in his field. A lawyer so celebrated that he is the subject of a new Netflix feature film starring Michael Keaton. Feinberg and his colleagues occupy a niche of criminal justice system that belongs almost exclusively to them. Now that after high-profile disasters and public scandals, they are who politicos and corporations call to run compensation funds, the pools of money set aside to pay restitution to survivors. Following 9/11 Victims Fund, which is the US government asked him to oversee and which he did for no fee. Feinberg's approach has blossomed over the last 2 decades, becoming an increasingly common strategy for responding to crisis. But it has rarely been questioned until recently, when he was hired to design the program for survivors of Epstein's alleged abuse. I'm not sure. I mean, my daughter, she's 8, and I've just told her about, 9/11, the Two Towers and all that. But I didn't tell her the theories out there, So I just keep it short. She questions it, though. Even though I've not said a word, she questions it. Yeah. Well, do you know what? 8-year-olds are so bright. So bright, the questions they come out with. Yeah. I don't think the list, what I've just read off, is the actual list, because when I think about it, a lot of people have been on that list that I've heard of and not on that, So I do wonder if we're getting disinformation and being silenced. But I think that people should realise that these people need exposed who have been. I don't think getting paid means you should be silent. I don't think that helps. After Epstein's death, his estate hired Feinberg and Burroughs to establish a victims' compensation fund administered by Jordana Fieldman, who has previously worked in Fieldberg in 9/11 Victims Fund. The operation soon set out about taking applicants and received more than 2,200 claims from women claiming to be victims of Epstein's abuse before it came to a halt in March. But something happened. And you've got to think, a lot of people don't come forward as well. So 200 victims. Let's say 2/3 of them are lying, right? 1/3 of them are telling the truth. Double that would be telling nothing, saying nothing. I've already been paid off. Yeah? Okay. So you know that. But something happened that some of Epstein's alleged victims say they did not expect. While the compensation fund doled out roughly 125 million overall, that is nothing. It's offered a small settlement or no money at all to some women who anticipated receiving it. Disgusting. Creating concern among the applicants and their lawyers that the fund was falling short on its stated missions to help victims. Camille Burroughs and Kenneth Feinberg listened during the news conference in Philadelphia in November 2018 about the compensation fund for the victims' child sexual abuse in the Catholic clergy. Okay, that's where I've heard his name, innit? Ultimately, some alleged victims fear the fund. I think these people are fucking gangsters, I'm not going to lie. Just gangsters with silk collar shirts. That's all. Yeah? I'm terrified sometimes because of the stuff I say. Ultimately, some alleged victims fear and fund may have been helped victims less than they've expected. and protected people who aided Epstein and Epstein's abuse. Unlike the 9/11 Fund and some other Feinberg missions to help victims, such as the Boston Marathon bombing, the Epstein Victims compensation pool isn't being filled by the government funds or by charitable donations, nor by Feinberg's team working for free. The fund was initiated by the overseers of Epstein's estate, there we go, which was valued $635 million. No way. Be more than that. It's just that's what is cap. That's what they could get their hands on, if you know what I mean. They haven't worked out all his little schemes. And I'll be honest with you, there's a reason why he was put where he was put. And I do think he was fed of some kind. I don't know. There's just too many discrepancies. Also, Epstein was a pervert. You know, it doesn't help. You know what I mean? In court filings after his death, the Feinberg team had been paid more than $3 million to administer it, not including staff expenses, according to the records and information provided to the estate. Despite being announced with much fanfare, the Epstein Fund raises fundamental questions about the benefits most when a pot of money is created to help victims after a crisis. While such funds are often touted for their benefits to the victims, this organisation putting up the money for the fund often has much to gain, including better public relations. Yeah, you know. You got people who genuinely want to help and things like that, and give them a lot of money, lovelies, you know. Significantly fewer lawyers and control over how the scandal gets resolved. Many Epstein victims accepted settlements from the fund and waived their right to sue not only the Epstein estate, but those who he retained for his alleged trafficking operation, including Maxwell. According to the former victim who applied for the settlement, in addition, lawyers said the settlement received by the victims were significantly smaller than what the court would award if the victims prevailed. I see. And they may have prevented and shut down lawsuits that could have been unearthed and full extent of the Epstein crimes. I see. A quote from the lawyer who's represented the victim said, "I'm pretty confident they're not awarding anything close to the entire amount of the estate, and why shouldn't they? Given all that critics, including many prominent lawyers, are wondering why more Epstein estate hasn't been allocated to the victims through the fund. I'm pretty confident they're not awarding anything close to the entire amount of the estate. No way. And why shouldn't they?" said Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 of the alleged victims. Epstein was the most prolific sexual predator I've ever heard of. Really? He's had hundreds and hundreds of victims, if not thousands. Bloody hell. He purported to have abused 3 girls a day at some times. This is very elaborate sex trafficking ring, Bloom continued. She also works on the Jessica Taylor, I think, one of the victims. I think she knows more about the human trial than we do. I think there's more to this trial. That's why they've not got Attorney John Ray involved, because he's got too many morals, if you understand me. Yeah, he wouldn't know how to. I think being a lawyer is pretty difficult job. Sometimes you have to like hide the truth to get somewhere. Yeah, to get to the target, if you know what I mean. Epstein's estate has purview over which a former associates cannot be sued by the women who accepted settlements. Yeah, exactly. Which is wrong. You should be able to. You know, the compensation isn't meant to shut your mouth. The alleged victims have been told, including 2 lawyers, who act as executors, and his ex-girlfriend Maxwell, who is slated to stand trial for sex trafficking later this year. She's worse than him, you know, reading them documents. She's worse than him. She actually encouraged him a lot, you know. I reckon he sent her over to Epstein, you know, her father, after he died, well, killed. Was thrown off the boat in Tenerife. Yeah, bye. And she was made to go there because Daddy went around to give her what she wants anymore. So Daddy's little network was full of paedophiles. I want to get to that. The lawyers Brandon Indike and Richard Kahn have been accused by the Attorney General of the US Virgin Islands, Dennis George, in court filings as being indispensable captains of Epstein's alleged trafficking enterprise. Daniel Weiner, a lawyer for Epstein's estate, said in an email that there was no monetary limit on the amounts awarded. So he's sort of like getting paid probably double than he's given, you know? I don't know what that means. I can't, doesn't sound right, does it? Thanks to Rick Bryant, who got me onto this article, because yeah, it isn't right by the fund, and set the notion that the fund protected money for other interests is completely off base. The co-executors owe a oh no, lost what I'm doing now. Where's that article? It's not the same article with the disinformation on, by the way. Sorry, I haven't eaten yet. My tummy's big and all kinds of noises. I hope hope everyone's having a good week. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm sorry I write so much. This is the channel that might make you feel a bit glum, yeah? Go and listen to some good music afterwards. Indictment can't empathetically deny the accusation that they were part of Epstein's alleged wrongdoing, Weiner said. Still, plaintiffs' lawyers say the estate created the compensation fund in part because it served its own interests. Of course, it's like the 9/11 thing. I'm not going to go into that because that's just a nightmare. I was down that rabbit hole for about 5 years. A compensation fund did not fall out of the sky, said Mitchell Garabedian, a lawyer who represented hundreds of sex abuse cases in the Catholic Church. Yeah, I've heard of him. Which later turned to Feinberg's team to compensate victims in arrangements similar to that of Epstein Fund. It was created by the institution to compensate victims who were sexually abused while perpetrators were associated with the institution. A court-offered stands outside Manhattan Courthouse where Ghislaine Maxwell's resignment hearing was set to occur in July 2020. There are mixed emotions among sex abuse survivors about compensation, Garabedian added. Feinberg, Burroughs and Feldman, who have dedicated much of their lives to dispensing compensation funds, argue the funds are a way to help as many people as possible while avoiding lawsuits, which can be expensive and grueling for the victims. I understand that bit. Feinberg referred questions about Epstein Fund to Burroughs and Feldman. In administration, the Epstein Fund, Feldman said in an interview that she had total independence from the estate. This is an imperfect exercise, an imperfect substitute for undoing the wrong. There's no way to do that, Feldman said. There is a value in the process of coming forward and having someone acknowledge and validate the suffering. We designed this process to create a safe space for victims who resolve their claims in a compassionate, non-adversarial way. For some of the survivors of Epstein abuse, the compensation fund did not bring feelings of resolution, but of confusion, anger, and regret. Oh, that's sad. That was really, I can imagine. Only imagine. It makes me so angry that these women know these things about me without me guessing anything, said one former model who met with Feldman and the other people administering the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund late last year. Now, let's say you come forward, you say what happened to you and all that, and you don't want to go through court. You should be able to get compensation for that. No, I'll be honest with you, if there's evidence to support you being there. Now, it's a very, very difficult thing to prove. Very difficult. Now, these girls can prove it by a design, talking about how they looked how the house was, everything like that. And that gives you an indication of the victims of Epstein, yeah. There's ways around it because I've read the depositions and they ask about what Marilyn Gasoline looks naked, how big she is, and all that, you know. A former model said she was 21 years old when she met Epstein while on a photo shoot in Tala, not far from Epstein's Virgin Island estate. A friend on the shoot knew Epstein, who sent a boat to pick the woman and her friend and take them to his island, she said. Later that day, Epstein and their mutual friend assaulted her, she said. Oh my God. He started, so she'd been set up. He started touching me. She did too. I didn't think that was going to happen when I got there, she said. She didn't talk to Epstein for a year after the initial assault, but Epstein repeatedly reached out and they eventually reconnected, she said. Epstein introduced, see, this is it with the Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, people have it badly after being assaulted. People say, why'd you stay? Well, their abuse to them makes them feel like they couldn't control themselves because, I know this sounds dark, because they loved them so much, they liked them so much, yeah. That's how you rationalise it in your brain, abuse. Oh, he hit me because he doesn't know how to display his love. Yeah, that type of crap. Anyway, it's a human response, right? Epstein repeatedly reached out and they eventually reconnected, she said. Epstein introduced her to the head of the prestigious modelling agency, she said. She said she became part of Epstein's social crowd, and she estimates she had 10 sexual encounters with him. Look at that. You're not getting off there if you go there. Epstein owned a villa on Little St. James in St. Thomas. Beautiful place on the Virgin Islands. Middle of fucking nowhere. You ain't getting off. The former model said she hesitated to participate in the compensation fund because she had buried the memories of Epstein for years and didn't want to revisit them. But after being encouraged by the lawyers to help bring Epstein's abuse to light, she decided to file a claim last September. She spent 2 hours on Zoom call with Fieldman and the other administrators laying out the details of the time she spent with Epstein and presented evidence. See, that's it. She presented evidence. She deserves as much as due-free. I don't think it's fair that certain people get a lot and then others don't, yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't know the case, but I think people, if they've been groomed, deserve a lot more. Is not the way it should be. You should be given equal amounts to everyone, okay? If it was touching, groping, stuff like that, yeah, less. But intercourse, come on now, it affects you forever. It does. Epstein has presented evidence like cards. She presented, evidence and presented evidence like cards he had sent her and the affidavits from friends who she said she had told about the abuse when it happened. The conversation felt like talking to supportive friends, she said. Her claim was denied a few months later. Per the rules of compensation fund, she didn't receive an explanation for why, and she can't appeal the decision. That's disgusting. It's like saying to me, your story wasn't valid. You don't believe, we don't believe you, the former model said. That's disgusting. Politico spoke to 4 women about their experience with the compensation fund, as well as half a dozen lawyers representing alleged Epstein victims, who spoke about their clients' experience. 2 of the women said they were satisfied with the settlements they'd been offered. One had been offered no settlement, and one said she had not heard back from the fund after her interview. So why go through all that turmoil in your life, forced to speak, to get brushed aside and ghosted? The fund said that it received 225 applicants overall. This is what she's saying, and gave settlements to approximately 150 women. The fund issued payments that ranged from low 6-figure settlements to more than $1 million. Lawyers representing Epstein's alleged victims said and gave out more than 121 million in all. It's like saying to me, your story wasn't valid. We don't believe you, former model who claims was denied by the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund because the Compensation Fund didn't explain its decision about how much money it handed out and who received it. The experience left women who were dissatisfied with questions they had no way of getting the answer to. Had the fund denied them money because they continued to see Epstein after the initial abuse? That is wrong. That is wrong. Listen, abuse is so strange. Did the fund operators not believe their stories? Gosh, were they offered less money if they applied for the money later in the process? She has no idea. After the fund had handed out millions, such questions were purely financial. They spoke to whether the women were being heard and believed when they spoke with the fund about painful experiences with Epstein. Sometimes for the first time, women and their lawyers told Politico. Fieldman, the administrator in charge of the estate, said she took a ground-up approach, looking at the women's cases claim by claim to make a determination. The compensation is determined based on the information that's available to me, based on my experience and my independent judgment, Fieldman said. Her decisions were based on factors such as the impact of abuse on the claimants and the credibility of their claims, and not on factors that weigh on civil lawsuits, such as whether the woman were outside the statute of limitations to sue the estate, she said. Okay, so that means it happened at St. James's, right? Anything that happened there, people can't get compensation for. I don't get it. Gloria Allred, who represents 20 of alleged victims and has represented clients in abuse cases against men such as Bill Crosby, said she believed Epstein's victims should have been compensated with much larger share of Epstein's estate. She's right. She's freaking right. Attorney Gore holds a picture of Epstein and one of his alleged victims, who she is representing. Oh, so she's come forward this one now. During the news conference in New York in 2019, Allred displays in 2097 Santa Monica Police Department report, as she addresses reporters about an alleged Epstein victim she is representing at the news conference in Los Angeles in 2020. Given that the estate was at one point valued at 635 million, the 121 to 125 million provided by Epstein Victims, provided by the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, seems to be very small amounts paid to the victims for the harm they suffered, Allred said. The amount awarded to many of them was insufficient and undervalued the sexual abuse that they suffered. The fact that many of them were sex trafficked to him, yeah, that's the one. That's what you've got to pay the big money for. To him. Then when they were underage girls and the damage inflicted on them, yes. There's no appeal from the Epstein Fund award, and there are no reasons or findings of fact provided when an award is made, Allred said. That means some victims are left wondering about the basis of their award, which is wrong. And that also means the award do not always seem consistently tied to the potential claims or the actual harm experienced. Allred noted there were positive components to the Epstein Fund. The women who applied for the funding were treated respectfully when they met with the administrators. For the example, a remarkably different tone from the tough, drawn-out courtroom battle. And as Fieldman noted, it is significant that the fund allowed all women to apply, not only those who were within the statute of limitations for the lawsuit. But ultimately, the settlements offered to the women who had been allegedly abused by Epstein seemed scattershot in their amounts, and multiple lawyers said were surprisingly small given Epstein's vast wealth. There could be a lot of money left in that estate, Spencer Kervin, a lawyer representing alleged Epstein victims. He's right. At the end of the day, they compensated the victims. I don't think they compensated them overly well. Overall, we are disappointed, said Bloom, the lawyer who is representing 8 alleged victims. It's funny how many of these celebrities are not standing up for these women. You know, it's like with Puff Daddy, no women out there is standing and saying, "Come forward, don't be frightened. We are here for you." Like Beyonce, you know, I'm not so shocked with Beyonce. I'll be honest with you. She seems like a sheep. You know what I mean? Bloom, who once came under criticism herself for having advised accused of sex offender Harvey Weinstein, said she had multiple Epstein clients whom she expected to be offered settlements but were offered nothing. In the past, Filmberg had been open about the fact that victims are often dissatisfied with the results of the compensation fund. People come to a fund hoping to can be fixed. Fuck off, Emma. People come to a fund hoping it can fix horrible wrongs that they experienced, but it's difficult for money to do that, he argued. It is, I understand that. I've never done a program where anybody was happy. Money is a poor substitute for joy and happiness in these cases, he told the news host Charlie Rose in 2012. People are inclined to look over their shoulder at what the next person is getting, Feinberg further warned, it's not just what I'm going to receive from Mr. Feinberg as a result of this program. What did my neighbour get? Born in small city of Broxton, Mass, about 25 miles from Boston, Feinberg landed in Washington in late 1970s. As an aide to late Massachusetts Senator Teddy Kennedy there, he grew close to future Supreme Court Justice Steve Breyer, who became a lifelong friend. It's a picture with Joe Biden, chairman of the Senate Committee, talks to then Supreme Court nominee Stephen Breyer when Sen. Edward Kennedy looks on in Washington in 1994. This picture is taken. Over time, Feinberg shot up to the ranks in Washington law as Washington lawyers, in part due to his clear-eyed ability to parse out settlements where conversations with survivors can be laden with hurt and resentment. Ken is accustomed to handling these sorts of issues without emotion. Former U.S. Attorney John Ashcroft said to Wall Street Journal in 2010, he was very good at distinguishing the deserving from the undeserving. After leaving Kennedy's office, Feinberg oversaw a settlement fund created by a court who handed out payments to veterans who said they had been injured by Agent Orange, the toxic herbicide used by US forces in Vietnam. It led to the string of other funds for Feinberg after the September 11 terrorist attacks. Feinberg was appointed by Ashcroft to head up a fund for aid victims and families. In the years that followed, the fund would dole out more than $8 billion. Look, if you don't like listening to this stuff, I have other content you can look up, and honestly, I like to do all different types of content. Okay. In September 11 Fund, widely considered a success, helped spur a generation of other funds, some of them charitable and some backed by corporations. Feinberg oversaw payment programs set up after the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal. Now, Human's uncle was abusing and doing rituals on children. I have a lot of stuff on that. There's a connection here. There's a connection with all that. I'm not saying Human knew Epstein, but there's a connection of hiding these things, paying people to shut the fuck up isn't the answer, because they can go about their business and keep going. That's the thing with the Epstein list. Yeah? You know, I mean, these people are badasses, you know what I mean? Proper bad people. And they're getting away with it because they pay people off. It's for the silence. It's very distraught as a victim, I imagine, to do that. Sex abuse scandal. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill of 2015, Volkswagen emissions scandal, and the Boston Marathon bombing. After Congress passed TARP, which bailed out the financial industry amid the growing 2008 financial crisis, Feinberg was again called in. See, these rich bastards aren't helping people. They're helping themselves, lovelies, okay? Feinberg was getting called in Washington, where he was put in charge of clearing banks' salaries for their executives. Feinberg has spoken of himself as an agent who is tapped by policymakers and administrators justice, and has often noted that most of his high-profile cases have been pro bono because of their charitable nature. These figs are run by the wrong people. When tragedy strikes and policymakers seek creative compensation solutions, I accept the call of public service, he wrote in his 2012 book. The Epstein Victims Compensation Fund is different. Feinberg's team was hired not by policymakers serving the public, but the Epstein estate, which has direct interest in curbing lawsuits and calming the negative fallout from the string of revelations in recent years about his sexual abuse. Unlike his pro bono work, his firm was paid $1.7 million for its work on the Epstein Fund. Fieldman, who prior to the Epstein Fund worked at September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, was separately paid a salary of $150,000 a month. What the fuck? That's a salary, yo. According to Epstein Estate and figures in court records, Feinberg referred to the questions about Epstein Fund to Burroughs and Fieldman. In a settlement fund, an administrator like Feinberg is supposed to put a principal ahead of their own interests and have loyalty to the goals of the objectives of the fund, as opposed to a traditional attorney-client relationship, where their loyalty is always to a client, said Michael Downey. Should be like John Ray, someone like him in charge, or Lena, someone honest. A lawyer who specialises in legal ethics. That's why I got out of being... I worked as a bookkeeper in the end, instead of being a solicitor. Then I went into defence legal secretary, and I found it disturbing, and I couldn't do it. Yeah. I couldn't look for errors in people who have been abused, hurt, things like that. It was horrible. I did that job for 3 years. Pay well though. There's a benefit for probate estate of getting things done. There's a public relation benefit, and there's a benefit to everyone getting claims paid out and keeping down costs, continued Downey. Garabedian, who litigated the cases of the Catholic Church abuse survivors, said that some survivors have doubts about applying for settlement funds because of the source of their funding. Yeah, imagine. And the limited results they can deliver for the victims. Many abuse victims feel compensation funds are not independent, simply because the source of the income is from the institution which allowed the sex abuser to abuse. Garabedian, I said, he is very right. He is so right, spot on. And while many people want a swift closure that can come with the applying for the settlement, many abuse victims want and unearth the truth through the litigation, which can bring more accountability. Nonetheless, it's freaking hard though, innit? Look what Jeffrey's been through. dragged through, you know. Prince Andrew's an absolute dickhead, you know. I'm a royal family supporter, but after Diana, I don't know, you know. I really don't. I have hope. I have hope for the family, but the things I've heard about Mountbatten and all that, and the Catholic Church in England, I can't even talk about it because it's in my country and people have disappeared over it. So you don't want to talk about things like that, you know, because also it drags up people's past and it's very sad. It's very sad. But I'd look her up, you know, the Jersey one, where, do you know the Madeleine McCann? I'll give you some information, some tea. The Madeleine McCann parents, you know, with the cadaver dog. That cadaver dog went to Jersey and found millions of bones of children on the grave, or just scattered everywhere. She didn't want to use that dog, right? She didn't. That dog. If that she went and because of that, right? The Jersey case was like, yeah, you can't prove that because, you know, look what it did for the Madeleine McCann case. It destroyed the evidence of that case because of that. Because she didn't want to admit that she killed her own child, okay? Now, that child could have had an accident, that's why the blood was in the room, and they feared for their other children, so they got rid of Madeleine. I don't know. I still don't know. It's a really dark case, but yeah. Nonetheless, compensation fund programs have proliferated in recent years, in part because they can carry such benefits for an offering corporation or non-profit that's trying to mitigate damage. The September 11 Compensation Fund shows how the interests of the plaintiff and the defendant can mix. The fund was established by Congress and lawmakers tried to address concern among the airlines that families of the people who died in the attacks would sue, alleging the airlines were being negligent when the terrorists got on board their planes. Yeah, definitely. The lawsuits could have bankrupted the industry, airline representatives warned lawmakers. So, Congress decided to grant a liability shield limiting lawsuits stemming from 9/11 attacks. But to offset the protection, lawmakers created a benefit system for survivors and family victims. A government-sponsored settlement fund meant to help heal the wounds and prevent lawsuits. Victims who signed for September 11th claims process also had to waive their rights to file other lawsuits when they entered the claim process. Ken is accustomed to handling these sorts of issues without emotion. He was very good at distinguishing the deserving from the undeserving. Oh yeah, how do you know? Settlement funds, including Epstein Fund, frequently required that victims forfeit their right, which is wrong, to file a lawsuit when they accept a payment. But in his book, Feinberg suggests that the funds don't even need to be explicitly bar victims from suing. He believes that just having a fund helps curb anger and create goodwill, making people less likely to have legal action. This is even more true when the payments come from charity funds, like the Victims' Compensation Fund, that Feinberg ran in 2007. Virginia Tech shooting, Feinberg said. The Virginia Tech story has important implications for policymakers considering similar compensations programs in the future. Feinberg wrote in his book, while many funds were required Feinberg to hand out settlements on a person-by-person basis. After a Virginia Tech shooting, victims and their families received the same amount of money from a charitable fund, which appeals to the deeply ingrained American value that all men are created equal, he said. As a result, lawsuits were largely avoided, even without requiring a formal promise not to sue, Feinberg wrote. The 200 claimants after the Virginia Tech shooting were still allowed to sue even after receiving the money, but only two choose to do so, Feinberg wrote. But still two who need to talk. I think you should be able to talk about it. Like, she should be able to talk about Prince Andrew. Now, the Queen's passed away now. I think she has that legal opportunity, and she hasn't. That's their point. That's their prerogative. Let me know what you think in the comments, please. If you like me doing this type of thing, I like finding out stuff. Real stuff, yeah. It's all connected. It's all connected. There are other more discreet ways that Feinberg's work could have helped an organisation tied up in scandal, like restoring its image or staving off the attention of angry lawmakers. When Feinberg was working to establish victims' compensation funds for the Catholic Church, a leaked transcript of the conversation between him and the church leaders revealed him touting those benefits. In closed-door 2017 teleconference with church leaders in upstate New York, a transcript which was later obtained by ABC News, Feinberg argued that the compensation fund could help the Catholic Church dissuade New York State legislators from considering reopening the statute of limitations for minors who had experienced sexual abuse. Now, I had someone, Oblivion, whatever, Benson, say that this lady was lying who went for the compensation over, did a deposition with John, I don't know if it was John Ray or who did the deposition on Kenneth Human, but it's people like that need to shut the fuck up, yeah, because they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Such a change in state of law, which later passed, would allow many adults who have been abused as children to come forward and sue the church. But with a compensation fund, Feinberg told the church leaders lawmakers may stand down. Bishop David Zubrick leaves the stage after introducing attorneys Camille Byros and Kenneth Feinberg, who will administer the clergy's child abuse victims compensation fund in December 2018. One very important principle that is guiding the various dioceses in Manhattan and Long Island is the fear that if a statute is reopened and there are people who did not participate earlier and sign a release in this program, some of the allegations may resolve on the courthouse steps with a 5 million demand or a 2 million demand. Feinberg told the upstate church leaders, right now, we have not paid any claim, however horrific, at more than 500,000. Byros, who was also on the call, indicated that though the fund boasted of its independence and said Byros and Feinberg had complete autonomy in their settlement decisions, they were in touch with the church as they ran their programs. Same principle with the Epstein Fund, wouldn't it? Be the same principle. I just want everyone to be aware that once we take over and implement the program, it remains an open dialogue with the diocese, it means the church. And Byros said during the call, according to the transcript, we are constantly on the phone with New York, Brooklyn, and now Rockville Center. If we have any questions about the priests in the file, the claimants, they are an incredible resource to us. Feinberg and Byros did not respond to questions about the ABC News story. Asked about her relationship with the Epstein estate, Fieldman, the fund administrator, said had operated independently of the Epstein estate and took steps to ensure the estate was not involved in the fund. Okay. Such as not giving the estate any access to the claims files from the alleged victims. I understand the skepticism. I too was initially skeptical when I was offered the position of as administrator. The total independence of the administrator was a key thing I insisted on, Fieldman said. I did have complete autonomy over the program and insisted that the estate had no authority to interfere in the claims decisions. So where's the money coming from? I need more clarity about this. My credibility is why I'm hired for these programs, Fieldman said. There was one thing Fieldman said that she did not have autonomy over: the scope of the release signed by women who accepted settlements promising they would not sue Epstein estate or people he'd employed in his alleged sex trafficking ring. The number of people who could be shielded from future lawsuits could be long. Women who accepted money would not be able to sue Maxwell, who is expected to stand trial later this year for her alleged role in the Epstein enterprise. According to one applicant, Maxwell has been accused of helping recruit women for Epstein and, at times, participating in forced sexual encounters with them. Another form of Epstein allies could still see a windfall of cash from his estate, which estimated at contained 190 million at the end of June, but whose beneficiaries are still unknown. The court filing by Epstein estate after his death listed only one person, his brother Mark, as a potential beneficiary of Epstein's money, as he left no will. But Epstein had signed a will just days before he died, and moved all of his money into a trust whose beneficiaries are secret. Two Epstein lawyers, Indike and Khan, are executors of the estate, and though former acquaintances speculate over friends or former romantic partners of Epstein may have wanted to reward It's not known who is slated to receive his money. At the time of his death, Epstein's wealth was staggering. He had 986,301 pounds in hedge funds and private equity equity investments. 18 million 551,700 worth of aviation assets and automobiles and boats, properties in Paris, Palm Beach, New Mexico and New Virgin Islands, and his historic 7-story, 21,000 square foot Upper East End Upper End East Side townhouse valued at nearly 56 million, according to accounting of his assets by the estate filed in probate court in Virginia Islands. I mean, who got the estate? Why is it secret? His personal property, which included artwork by Picasso and Paul Cézanne, had yet to be appraised. Jesus Christ. According to the accounting provided in court, the Epstein estate valued itself at $635 million at the end of 2019, according to documents filed in the court in the Virgin Islands. Within a year of the estate paid $190 million in estate taxes to federal government, according to reports at the time. The Epstein Victims Compensation Fund paid out a fraction of his wealth of $121 million in all, the fund said, and maintaining the estate and fighting court battles, several of which are still being waged in New York, state of the Virgin Islands and Florida, can cost multiple millions of dollars in a month. Accounting provided by the estates to probate court shows. Probate goes through all kinds of taxes, book and shoes, everything, you know what I mean? I had a nan who didn't write a will, and I didn't get my inheritance in full. Yeah, the solicitor took 11 grand off me and only give me 3. That's the type of shit they do in probate. George, the Attorney General for the U.S. Virgin Islands, has accused Epstein estate of squandering its resources in the winter of 2021 after Epstein estate reported a drop in funds. She asked the court to freeze the estate assets. Oh, picking at it, that's why. This failure to provide promised compensation for Epstein victim is one entirely of the estate's and its co-executors making. Yeah. George wrote in a court documents filed in the Virgin Islands. Epstein executors have mismanaged the estate assets by paying for their own lawyer fees. Fucking hell. For the lawyer fees in litigation expenses of persons alleged to be involved and or have knowledge of Epstein's alleged sex abuse, and for landscaping Epstein's properties and covering maintenance for his aircraft, George said. Indyke and Khan, who as co-executors proposed the victim compensation fund, and hired Feinberg. I see. I get it. Is that they've hired him to do it, you know, which is wrong, I would have thought. Or just administrators for Epstein, but indispensable captains of his enterprise. George also alleged in the court filings, in 3 cases, they knowingly facilitated and fraudulent and coerced marriages between foreign women, and Epstein was abusing and other women in order to allow foreigners to stay in the United States. George wrote, enabling a fraud that would further bind Epstein victims to him and enabled Epstein to continue to control and abuse these victims. Other times, they obtained large and frequent stocks of cash for Epstein, which, based on public knowledge, would have funded Epstein's cash payments for massages, code for sex, and signed 300,000 worth of checks made out to young women, George wrote. Weiner, the lawyer representing the estate, refuted the notion that the estate had squandered funds and that the executors were involved in the Epstein alleged wrongdoing. The co-executors disagree strongly with any suggestion that they have in any way wasted Epstein's estate. Weiner said, both the Superior Court and the United States Virgin Islands and the special master appointed by the court have specifically recognized the co-executors need to continue to maintain the estate's real estate and other properties as they marshal the estate's non-liquid assets for ultimate sale or disposition, Weiner said. Asked about the allegations that and Khan were part of Epstein's alleged trafficking, Weiner said the co-executors empathetically deny those allegations. Neither Mr. Endyke or Mr. Khan engaged in any misconduct of any kind at any time. According to the numbers released by the Victims' Compensation Fund, 92% of the women who were offered settlements, accepted them, and waived their right to press further charges. Several other lawsuits against Epstein estate are still pending. One claimant who said she was assaulted by Epstein and asked for anonymity because her case with the fund has not yet been resolved expressed mixed feelings. She said she worries that Maxwell and others who helped Epstein will not be held to as much account after nearly 140 women accepted settlements from the fund. So she thinks because she's paid them off, she doesn't care anyway. Let's point it out. They told me early on that if you receive monetary compensation and you file a lawsuit, you have to drop the lawsuit. That was the condition made me aware of. The women said. That made me question the morality behind this compensation fund. And that's the end of the article. What do you think? Does being paid allow lawyers to make you stay silent? I don't think so. I think that if you stay silent, you're just going to cause yourself more trauma. That's the damning thing about this. It's disgusting. Okay, listen, I don't want anyone thinking that the list I've just give you of the people is the actual list. That's what I found so far. I have no idea what it is. Apparently it was fake, so I have no idea. of what list is out there. If you can give me a link, that'd be fantastic. Now, you have a great weekend, folks. Lots of love. Eat loads of bacon butties. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye-bye.